Now we are in the Blue Letter Lexicon, and we see in the Blue Letter Lexicon under outline of biblical usage, we see 1. It says bastard, child of incest, and illegitimate child. Then we see A, B, and C, which says under A, bastard, B, mixed population, and C, born of a Jewish father and a heathen mother. And then underneath that, highlighted in the purple, you see Strong's definition. So this is the definition of the word, and highlighted in purple. And it says mamzar, from the unused root word meaning to alienate, a mongrel, born of a Jewish father and a heathen mother, bastard. So the definition of the word is basically referring to a child that is biracial. So we focused on a child born outside of wedlock. We focused on the illegitimate child born outside of wedlock, and biracial children. We dealt with all of that. Now it's time to deal with child of incest. We're about to get into the laws that deal with children born through incest. Hello everyone. Welcome to the last part of this Bible study series called Mamzar's Q&A Blue Letter Lexicon. Now I will be dealing with the laws of incest, because in the Blue Letter Lexicon it says on the outline of biblical uses portion of the Blue Letter Lexicon, when you look up the word mamzar, it says bastard, child of incest, illegitimate child. It also says a child that is born of a Jewish father and a heathen mother. And the definition of the word mamzar is to alienate a mongrel, born of an Israelite father and a heathen mother. It says to alienate a mongrel. A mongrel is an old verb term that refers to a biracial child, or anything that's mixed breed. But the word mongrel could also refer to dogs that are mixed. You see what I'm saying? You mix a Chihuahua with a poodle and you produce a mongrel. They call that now a mutt. So that word was used to describe those things that were mixed, biracially mixed. Some type of genealogical mixer. If I made my own word right there. You can put that in the Urban Dictionary right there. But let's get into this. In Leviticus chapter 18 is the laws that deal with incest or forbidden sexual acts according to the Most High. So in Leviticus chapter 18 you get the laws that deal with forbidden sexual acts. And for this portion we'll be dealing with the laws that deal with incest. I'm in the Good News Translation. And I'm going to start with verse 8. And it reads, I'm reading from verse 8 to 18. So in Leviticus chapter 18, verses 8 to verse 18 deals with the laws that deal with incest. I'm reading from the Good News Translation. You can get your King James, your New International Version, whatever Bible you have, and it's going to say the same exact thing that I'm reading to you. Just a little bit clearer in the English language that we use today, the way we talk. So Deuteronomy chapter 18 verses 8 through 18, and it reads, it says, do not disgrace your father by having intercourse with any of his other wives. Do not have intercourse with your sister or your stepsister, whether or not she was brought up in the same home as you. Do not have intercourse with your granddaughter. That would be a disgrace to you. Do not have intercourse with a half-sister. She too is your sister. Do not have intercourse with an aunt, whether she is your father's sister or your mother's sister. Do not have intercourse with your uncle's wife. She too is your aunt. Do not have intercourse with your daughter-in-law or with your brother's wife. Do not have intercourse with the daughter or granddaughter of a woman with whom you have had intercourse with. they may be related to you, and that would be incest. Do not take your wife's sister as one of your wives, as long as your wife is living. So I just read to you all the laws that deal with incest. A man can't have sex with his daughter, and a son can't have sex with his mother, vice versa. You can't have sex with your brother's wife. You can't have sex with your stepsister. You can't have sex with your granddaughter, your grandmother. You can't have sex with your auntie. You see what I'm saying? A man can't have sexual intercourse with a woman and her daughter. You can't do that. That's the law. Now, let's go to the penalty of the law that deals with what happens if you break this law. This law that deals with incest. I'm in Leviticus chapter 20, and I will be reading verses 12, 14, 17, 19, 20, and 21. And beginning at verse 12, it says, and I'm in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 12. It says, if a man has intercourse with his daughter-in-law, they shall both be put to death. They have committed incest and are responsible for their own death. Verse 14. If a man marries a woman and her mother, all three shall be burnt to death because of the disgraceful thing they have done. Such a thing must not be permitted among you. So if a man marries a woman and her daughter, have sex with a woman and her daughter, like we read in Leviticus chapter 18, it says all three of them shall be burnt to death. Okay? Jump into verse 17. It says, if a man marries his sister or half-sister, they shall be publicly disgraced and driven out of the community. He has had intercourse with his sister and must suffer the consequences. Now let me pause there for a second. Verse 17. A man is not to have sex with his sister or his stepsister. If he does, they shall be driven out of the community. They shall be kicked out of Israel. They should be cut off from the line of Israel and be completely banished. Cut off. So if a man has sex with his sister and she has a child, they are kicked out. So that child ain't no, you want to say the child's a mamzar? Okay, but the child ain't even related to the children of Israel. That child and the parents would be considered heathens. Cast out, kicked out. I just want to emphasize on that one real quick. Verse 19, it says, if a man has intercourse with his aunt, both of them must suffer the consequences for incest. If a man has intercourse with his uncle's wife, he disgraces his uncle, and he and the woman will pay the penalty. Neither one will have children. If a man takes his brother's wife, they will die childless. He has done a ritually unclean thing and has disgraced his brother. So, if a man has sex with his uncle's wife or with his aunt, it says they shall die childless. What does that mean? That means if a man has sex with his aunt, right? Or if a man has sex with his brother's wife, if a man has sex with his auntie, his uncle's wife, that means he's committed incest with his uncle's wife. So he's committed incest and adultery. It says they shall die childless, meaning they go kill the man, the auntie, and the child. If a man has sex with his brother's wife, it says they shall die childless. That means that man's brother's wife and the child, whether she's pregnant or not. So our laws had people put to death for committing incest. So there would not be a child born out of incest in Israel because people were put to death for breaking this commandment. The law of breaking the commandment of not committing incest was death. You see what I'm saying? So how could a child survive that type of relationship and be a mamzer amongst the children of Israel if the penalty was death? There's no record in Scripture that shows any child being born of incest of the children of Israel. The only children we know that were born of incest were the children that Lot had through his daughters when they got him drunk and slept with their father and produced the Ammonites and the Moabites. But that wasn't the children of Israel. That was Lot and his daughters that got him drunk to have sex with him. So there's no scriptural record of any child in Israel being born of incest, having a child through incest. We do have 2 cases in Scripture, only 2, where an Israelite committed incest. Only 2. Reuben had sex with his father's concubine, Bilhah. But they did not produce a child through that act. Reuben was punished and he lost the birthright of the eldest son because of what he did. But him and Bilhah did not have a child through that act. Because he uncovered his father's nakedness by sleeping with his father's concubine, Bilhah, which was his father's wife. You know, Jacob married Bilhah to be a surrogate mother to, for his children, because at the time, Rachel couldn't have children. Right? Now, this is the second time. The second time that this law was broken in Israel was when David's eldest son, Amnon, raped his little sister, Tamar. Right? Now, Amnon conspired to rape his little sister, and his cousin helped him come up with this plan. He raped his little sister. His sister cried out. She told him, no, don't do this. This is against the law. Don't do this wicked thing. He did it anyway. What happened to Amnon a year later? Amnon was killed by his brother Absalom for raping his sister Tamar. You see what I'm saying? He was killed for committing incest. He was killed by his brother Absalom for raping his little sister. So we see in our law that there was a death sentence put on people for committing the act of incest. Now we have to deal with this portion. This is a Q&A. So I have the question. What happens if a girl is raped by her father? Or what happens if a girl is raped by her mother's boyfriend? Does that make their child mamzers? Well, let's get into the law that deals with rape. Now we're going into the King James Bible. I already covered this on the previous video, but that's a question. Because we're talking about children that's born through some type of incestuous relationship, and we know that child molestation and child rape and incestual relationships do happen in some dysfunctional homes where a mother's husband that's not related to they're not the children's biological father will rape and molest his wife's children. Or we have these sick fathers who will rape and molest their own biological daughters. We have that going on. We even have a man sleeping with this woman and having sex with her daughter on the side, or whatever kind of foolishness is going on there. So let's deal with that. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 28 and 29. It says, if a man finds a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed. Wait, let me rewind that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna start at verse 25 and 26. That's a different situation. And I'm using this one here to bring out, first of all, the law of incest is death, right? But let's go to the law that talks about if a woman is being raped, but she cries out and she reports it. Let's see what happens. It says, but if a man finds a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man forces her and lies with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. But unto the damsel there shall do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man raises against his neighbor and slayed him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried out, and there was no one to save her. So basically, in this situation, you had a woman who was engaged. She went out in the field or in the city, and some man found her and he raped her. And the woman cried out. She struggled. She tried to fight. She tried to resist. But there was no one to save her. So later on, she came back, reported, hey, some guy raped me. They found that man. They killed that man. But in the woman, there was no sin because she reported it. So she was innocent. She didn't commit incest. She was raped. I mean, in a situation of incest, if you were raped, then that's not your fault. You were innocent. You see what I'm saying? The person who rapes you, the person who molests you, they are guilty. They'll be put to death. And I'm using this verse in that context. You see what I'm saying? Because incest, it was committed by two consenting people. But in the case of being raped or molested, one person is the evildoer that's portraying this wicked act, and the other person has no power to defend themselves. You see what I'm saying? But according to this law, the law says that the woman cried out. She tried to stop it. So you have to fight. You have to resist. And you have to report it. Because if you do not report it, if this woman who was raped did not report it, and it was found out that she been sexually active, they would have killed this woman. And that's the same thing with incest. If your father is raping or molesting you, if your mother's boyfriend is raping and molesting you, if your stepfather is raping and molesting you, if your grandfather is raping and molesting you, same thing for your auntie, your grandmother, whoever. If you're being raped and molested, you have to tell. And that will exonerate you from being guilty of the law. You have to tell. It don't matter who you tell. If you're being raped by your stepdad, you can tell your mama. And don't just stop there. Tell your teacher, tell your auntie, tell your grandma, tell the police, tell anybody you can tell. Report it. On the day it happened, tell. If somebody don't believe you, tell somebody else. Always tell. Because you telling exonerates you. It proves your innocence. You was not a willing participant in this act. And that's another thing too. And see, that's a good thing I'm dealing with this subject, because, you know, a person will say, well, in the case of incest, what if the girl was raped? Parents, listen to me. And children, if you're watching this, listen to me. Parents, pay close attention. Single mothers, pay close attention. Fathers, pay close attention. You must tell your children about these kind of things that can happen to them. And you got to tell them to tell. Tell them about child molestation. Tell them about rape. Tell them what that is. And tell them to always come and tell you. And if they can't tell you, tell an auntie, tell an uncle, tell a brother, tell a teacher, tell a grandmother, tell the police. They know it's 911. They not use 911. You got to teach your children to tell you about these things. And also tell your child, don't let nobody do you anything if they and keep it a secret. Not even if they promise to buy you something. Because a lot of these children that's being molested and raped, the person who's doing this to them, especially if it's someone in the home or a relative, they'll do something to the child and promise to buy the child something. And the child will keep quiet for that gift. You see what I'm saying? Because you have not taught your child that this was wrong. And that no amount of money or anything can make you not tell me if somebody does this to you. You have to teach that to your children. Because I know, I've heard personal testimonies of women who allowed their mother's boyfriend to continuously rape them. Why? Because he brought them things to keep them quiet. And because they was a child. And the things he offered to them was big to them. But to us, a baby doll, you let this man have sex with you for a baby doll? You let this man have sex with you for a candy ball? You let this man have sex with you for, you know what I'm saying, for watch a movie or to go outside to play with your friends? You didn't tell because this man promised to let you do something or promised to give you something stupid? That's prostitution. That's you letting the man violate you sexually for money. That's what prostitutes and whores do. And our law says there shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel. So you have to teach your children, number one, don't let nobody talk to you in a sexual way. Don't let nobody do anything sexual to you. Put boundaries on your kids. Tell them what they can and cannot do and what grown-ups can and cannot do when it relates to them. Don't sit in no grown man's lap. If anybody talks to you sexually in a perverted way, tell. If you buy somebody's house and they show you a movie that has sex on it, tell. You have to teach your children this, because this can be prevented. There can be walls set up to protect your children from being raped and molested. You as the parent, as the adult, have to do those things with your kids, teaching them how to not be a victim. If somebody touches you, scream. Scream loud. Don't touch me like that. I'm going to tell. First of all, if a child reacts like that to somebody doing them something, the person that's doing it to them will stop. Because they know that this child has been taught and informed on what to do and what not to do and what not to let somebody else do to them. You see what I'm saying? You have to teach your children this, because not only are children raped and molested by family members and friends of the family, they're also raped and molested by their peers. You see what I'm saying? 8-year-old girl raped by a 10-year-old boy. 9-year-old girl raped by a 9-year-old boy. Or being sexually active by having sex with these children, because that 8-year-old boy may have been exposed to sexual things, and he want to try those sexual things on your unexperienced, ignorant daughter, but she's ignorant because she don't know anything. She don't know what's going on, but she's letting this boy do this to her because she wants this boy to like her, whatever. And you haven't taught her anything to educate her about these things not supposed to be done to her at a particular age and time. So it's your responsibility to teach your children about these things and to warn them and to watch the people who are around your kids. And a lot of women that's watching this video right now were victims of rape. Am I lying? A lot of you women were victims of rape or were molested. And it probably went on for quite some time. And you didn't know how to tell because you didn't know how your parents were going to react. And you didn't know how to tell and how your parents were going to react because they didn't come to you and talk to you and teach you about what somebody is not supposed to do to you. If they had taught you this and taught you to tell them, you would have been comfortable coming straight to them and telling them right when it happened. But because they didn't install that information in you, you didn't tell. Or when you did tell, they didn't believe you and you just said, forget about it. No, you have to tell your child, if they're not only to tell you, tell the teacher at school, tell the grandmother, tell the auntie. That way the person who does it gets in trouble. Period. Point blank. People know about it and can't put a stop to it. You have to educate your kids, ladies. Men, you have to educate your kids. Grandparents, if you're a grandparent and you're watching this video, you have to educate your grandkids because this is happening to them. Now, our law does not punish a woman who was raped and reported it. Right? If a child is born through rape, through an incestuous relationship, that woman has an obligation to either terminate their pregnancy, because our law says that they should die childless. So our law would put the child to death. But if you choose to keep the child, I can't see why the Most High will have that child cut off, because he's a product of incest. And you were the victim of rape. You see what I'm saying? But if you was a voluntary participant in this incestuous act, then our law, if it was a brother and a sister, you were kicked out, cast away, done with. You were discontinued from the children of Israel. But if it was a father, if it was a stepfather, if it was a grandpa, you see what I'm saying? If it was your mother's boyfriend, a man having sex with your mother and trying to have sex with you, and you didn't report it, then yes, your child would be under this curse because you didn't report it. You have broken the law by not reporting it. Because our law says that if a woman is raped, she has to report it. And if the woman did not report that a man had raped her, then both that man and that woman was put to death. So I have to go by the laws. And our laws put people who practice incest to death. So does Mams Amin a child of incest? There's not one scripture that shows a child being born of incest. When Reuben had sex with his father's concubine Bilhah, no child was born through that. There's no record that shows that. When Amnon raped his sister Tamar, there was no child born through that. There's no record of that. And the only other time in scriptures that you hear anything about incest being committed is in the New Testament, when Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and I believe it's around, matter of fact, I can go to it, I have enough time to go to it. And while I'm getting this, someone might say, well, in the scriptures, it says that Ham uncovered his father's nakedness. And to uncover your father's nakedness means to have sex with your father's wife. So that means if Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, that means that Ham had sex with his father's wife. And when Noah woke up and he learned what his son had did, Noah cursed Canaan, which was Ham's son. So does that mean that Ham is the son of, does that mean that Canaan is the son of Ham through his mother, which was Noah's wife? That has also been put out there. That is also a theory that Ham, when he uncovered his father's nakedness, means to have sex with his father's wife. And Noah's wife got pregnant for Ham and had Canaan, and that's why Canaan was cursed. And that would make Canaan a Mamzar. And I'm bringing this up because this is the Q&A, questions and answers. That is a question. So I would say, if Canaan is the product of incest between Ham and his mother, and then that's why the Most High told us not to mix with the children of Canaan, then so be it. Because the children of Israel didn't deal with the children that was born through incest. And nowhere in the scriptures. Right? And the Most High told us not to deal with the children of Ammon and Moab. Not because they were the children of incest, but because they didn't meet the children of Israel or bread them with water, and they hired Balaam to curse them. But the Most High turned that curse into a blessing. And that's in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 3 through 6. So, let me read this right quick. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and probably verses 1. And it says, now, it is actually being said that there is sexual immorality among you so terrible that not even the heathens would be guilty of it. I am told that a man is sleeping with his stepmother. How then can you be proud of this contrary? On the contrary, you should be filled with sadness, and the man who has done such a thing should be expelled from the fellowship. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 1 and 2, Paul speaks about in Corinthia there has been heard of a man having sex with his stepmother. This is a shameful thing, and this man shall be exterminated, expelled from the community, from the fellowship. Because see, we're no longer under the law, the curse of the law that would have us putting people to death for committing these sins. We're under the law of grace. You see what I'm saying? So we can no longer execute the judgment on these people from committing these acts, because then we would be guilty as well, and we also could be put to death because we have all done sins that are worthy of death. Right? So in this situation, this is a sin that is worthy of death. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching this Bible study breakdown. If you have not subscribed already, please subscribe to this channel. Please watch my other videos. Like them, share them, leave a comment. I want to thank you all for continuously supporting me. Someone suggested to me that I set up a GoFundMe account. So for those who would like to donate money to this ministry, I'm thinking about setting that up. I've been doing this for years and have not asked anyone for financial help. But if it's on your heart to support this ministry, I will set up a GoFundMe account so that you can help support my ministry. A couple of months ago, I did suffer a house fire and I lost my whole library of books. So the money could help me go and repurchase a lot of those historical books that had a lot of information in them that I used and provide to the people as proof. So I'm thinking about setting up a new account for that reason only, which is to get back all the research material that I had that I've lost in the fire, that right now I'm financially unable to get. So I may set up a GoFundMe account just for that purpose. But besides that, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe. Subscribe to both my channels. Peace and shalom.